Uh, Hello again, everybody. This is Dr. Llamosa. I'm a visiting clinical assistant professor for our College of Social Work. Um, and conference presentations. I do a lot of them, and mostly because I find it easier to talk to 100, 200, 300 people than I find it easier to talk to three or four because I am a huge introvert. And so if I have to talk about my scholarship, which we all need to do, right? Um, for me, it's a lot easier to do a conference presentation with a larger audience, just because that's just my personality. It's part of being an introverted scholar. So I've done lots and lots of conferences. I'm happy to share what I've learned over the years with y'all tonight. And thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you so much. All right, so everyone, a few of us are just going to be sharing some of our experiences, some ideas, some strategies, things that have been helpful to us. We'll throw a few things in the chat for you to look at. We'll also be monitoring the chat, so if at any point in time anyone has any questions or anything like that, feel free to throw them in there as well. But I will start. One of the first things that I recommend that students do or that we all do as practitioners is if you have not had experience attending professional conferences yet, before you attend to speak at one, I encourage you to go to them and learn. Kind of every conference kind of has different expectations and different things that they are looking for, different ways that you will present. There's a big difference between presenting in person versus presenting virtually versus hybrid sessions where you may be presenting virtually and is a live audience, or you are presenting to a live audience while there are also people attending virtually. It can be so different and it can be very intimidating, at least for me, if I don't know what I'm getting into. And so I really encourage you to attend conferences first, talk to presenters, realize um, it doesn't take a special person to present. We all have the capacity in us to be able to do that. It definitely takes planning and organization and confidence in yourself, which we'll talk about later. But I believe that you are all capable. We are all here because we have knowledge, because we're growing in knowledge. We're all passionate about a particular topic. And I think all of the work that you're doing through the program is definitely a lot of the products that you're creating that we have created lend well to just revising and adapting into a conference presentation. So that's really the big thing that I want to hit on first is turning the things that you're already doing into conference proposals, looking at those outlines and seeing what are your main points to add into slides, what kind of conferences are available that line up with your topic. If there are conferences that are very topic specific, like on child welfare versus conferences that are just social work practice in general versus social work education. And so seeing where your topic could line up. And then once you create that proposal one time, you may be able to use it multiple times and present the same thing to different audiences or just adapt it a little bit. There is one conference presentation I put together initially for a celebration of scholarship at the university where I teach, and I've readapted that two more times, and I've presented the same shell of my presentation three times, just with a different spin or perspective based upon the audience or the conference that I'm presenting to. And you can really gain more confidence that way. You can build upon the way that you present by what worked well, what didn't work, and know that it's not as intimidating that you don't have to start all over again from the beginning. So that's what I would encourage you to do. First is look at what you've already done. Even those infographics, those PSAs, we've done some PowerPoint presentations, even papers. Once you break those down and see where it fits into slides, you don't have to start all over again. So that would be my first piece of advice. Someone else want to jump
So,
in?
yeah, I'm going to jump in real quick. I was just adding to some of my notes. Hold on one second, water. Um, I was adding to my notes about the need for creativity. And the reason why I say that is because I think what makes an attractive proposal whether that is for a conference presentation or a grant presentation or a fellowship, any of those things, is providing innovation to a topic that it seems to be kind of either one thing that's kind of things people don't like to touch in child welfare is kinship care, especially in my state. I live in the state of Georgia, and oftentimes people literally shudder in a corner about kinship care, and I'm like, Grandma not gonna bite you. It's gonna be fine. But I say that to say that thinking about ways that you can be creative within your populations that you serve, providing innovation. One way, I mentioned that I teach as well, and one way that we have brought innovation to our educational experience at Fort Valley State is I had a lot of parenting students. And so those parenting students, they had difficulty getting childcare assistance. And it's very difficult to get the childcare scholarship that's state facilitated. But one way that I have offered another route to getting childcare is that we have a Head Start program on our campus. And so for children between the ages of, I think they have an early Head Start, which is like 3, then 4-year-olds can go to Head Start. So if their children fall in those age ranges, we've encouraged them to take advantage of Head Start as a way to, get the help they need for childcare while also being able to come to class. So, just thinking about ways that you could get creative with your population that you're serving, and stuff that seems like it's a hands-off topic. That's my favorite kind of work. A lot of people don't like to teach research. I teach research. A lot of people don't like to teach difficult, or I won't call them difficult, they're not difficult to me. But a lot of people don't like to teach policy. That's my jam. So, getting creative and thinking about the things that people seem to shy away from, those are the challenges you want to step up to. And I think that'll help bring some distinction to you as bring your proposal to some distinction.
Well done, well said, Deja. I agree with you completely. I want to jump in here and talk about a couple of things that have come up so far. One is this issue of creativity. Um, a lot of the things that may be common sense to you in your particular area of social work practice is not common sense to other people. A lot of the things that you feel are just a regular part of your practice is not a regular part of your practice, of the practice of other people. And so we as social workers have a tendency to diminish what we do and think, oh, that's just social work. That's just what I do. I'm just a social worker, right? What you do every day, regardless of the area of social work that you practice in, there's someone who's not in your area who would like to be, or who would like to learn more about it, or who would like to learn more about it so they can consult with you and your colleagues. So it's don't look at what you do every day as mundane work, because it's not for a lot of people. And so that's where that creativity comes in, right? So let's say you are really, really good at writing case notes. It's something that you do every day. You can do it with your eyes closed at this point. You hate doing them, but you do them anyway, and you're good at it. For every case note that you're writing, there are hundreds of MSW students who need to learn how to write case notes, and they will attend your conference because you're teaching them a skill that they're not learning in school, right? So that's just an example of something that we might think is mundane, but it's a skill that you've acquired, but it's not a skill that everybody has. The other thing is about adapting. I think, Jessie, you were talking about that, adapting your topic to different conference presentations. This is something that conference planners and like the committees that, choose the presentation, this is something that they struggle a lot with, is they get proposals on topics that seem really good, but they don't translate to that particular conference audience or for that year's topic, right? So CSWE, for example, Mallory and I were just at CSWE's annual program meeting. This year was in Denver. And I probably attended at least 5 or 6 sessions where the presenters had great information, but they did not translate it well to social work education. CSWE is a social work education conference. Why are you up in here talking about your clinical work? It's fine, but translate it. Like you can't, you get to the end of a clinical topic and go, oh, and then we're going to apply this to social work education. Just make sure you're teaching the stuff to your students. Like that won't do it. Like, so make sure that you are looking very closely at the audience for that particular conference, and if they have different tracks, or also the theme. Larger conferences have different themes every year. Next year, CSWE, this year was all about disability justice. Next year, for example, it's going to be about resilience or something like that, something about resilience. And so you could take a topic that you have presented to, a school social work audience and tailor it and translate it if there's value in that. Of course, we can't just make stuff up, but if there's value in that to social work educators, then you can just translate the material, apply the material in a way that makes sense to that particular audience. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. And in fact, it's a really good way of getting really good at your stuff, is presenting it to multiple audiences multiple times with a different spin on it. So it's a really, like, if you know your stuff, so just present it 3, 4 times, and then you're going to really know your stuff. And the last thing I'm going to say is the questions that people ask you during a conference presentation or poster presentation, it's gold. If they're asking you that question, that is either an opportunity to deepen your material in that area, or B, it's something that was unclear in your presentation that you can clarify, refine for next time. So every time I present at a conference, I have a little notebook. I write down every question everybody asks me, and then I go back and edit my material. So I'll stop here. Those are just some tips that I wanted to share.
Thank you, Dr. Llamosa. I think those were great. And one thing that I did with my presentation was we had a Mentimeter word cloud at the end of the presentation, and we asked, the goal was to provide 1 or 2 strategies that they could take back immediately and implement in their classroom for inclusivity and accessibility within education. So anything that they put on there, we saved it. I want to look and make sure everything that we presented, that those were included, and if not, include those. And then also I put it as a document in the drive that they had access to so they could see everyone else's ideas. But it really kind of came about in a weird way when my coworker and I found out they were having the CSWE conference and what it was in regards to the topic. We had already been working on things with our diversity and social justice committee, which included a peer review where one instructor would observe another instructor, and then there was evaluation forms where they would complete what pieces of diversity were not included, what pieces could be strengthened, that kind of thing. And so when this came up, we thought we have some of the things, but let's build onto that and what else we're doing in our classroom. And a lot of that feedback came from what we received from our evaluations. It was very helpful. And then building that, but we were both extremely nervous, I will say. I don't know how Dr. Llamosa does it so many times. I guess you kind of get used to it after a while, but we both got there, and the day before we found an empty conference room that was similar setup, and we practiced the whole speech a few times and ran through who was jumping in where. And then the day of, neither of us slept, I think. We got there super early and started working on it. And we were just so nervous. We had our notes, and And then somewhere in the middle, my laptop was about to die, and I did not bring my charger. So I was like, oh my God, this is the way to do your first presentation. But luckily, an audience member, teamwork, jumped in, had a charger, so we finished it up strong. But everybody, had really great feedback, and they all said they couldn't tell that we were nervous, but we were extremely nervous. So I really enjoyed it, and I would like to present again. And resilience is kind of where my capstone topic goes, so I'm very excited about that. But I would say just try it and see. It was very interesting, and the audience perspectives are so great to hear their feedback and what they're trying, and to make it interactive, and it builds your knowledge at the same time. So I think that I really enjoyed it, and I hope to do it again one day. So don't worry. If you're nervous and everything, that's completely normal, and bad things could happen, like your laptop almost dying. But we're all social workers, and we have resilience as well, and we push through and we make it happen. So that's all I have to say on that.
Yeah, Mallory, I love that you mentioned that you did it with your coworker. There are lots of presentations that are just an individual person. I've done that before as well, but I've also done it in groups of my colleagues. Recently, I presented at a conference with a colleague in this program. I had just put out a call on the Facebook group of, hey, I'm interested in presenting at this conference. This is my topic. Is there anybody else who's also interested and has a similar topic and would like to pair up to do it? And so I worked with Bethany Wallace, and we had never connected before at all. Like, that was the first time that we connected, but we utilized Canva to do our slides together, Zoom meetings to connect, lots of texting back and forth, and we're able to put together a presentation. And because it was a Zoom conference, although we could have met in person and done it, but I was able to collaborate with someone, way far away that I had never met, but we shared similar research on something, and it made it a whole lot less intimidating to do it with somebody else. And so that was a really neat thing as well, too. So if it's something that you're really kind of nervous about, especially for your first time, then reach out and find somebody, especially through this program. If there's somebody who shares similar research interests, or a colleague, another professional, anyone, you don't have to go at it alone. And the nice thing as well is, we presented 90 minutes, and I really only had to kind of in my mind prepare for about half of that. And so it cut down on the workload as well too. And so that's something that you can consider too, is reaching out to somebody if they are experienced with presenting or have a similar topic. You don't have to go at it alone. In fact, there are some conferences that will, as they're vetting through, will prefer more than one presenter. Or I have, prior to this program, been able to get in when they're looking at credentials with coworkers who do have their doctorate. So that's something to consider as well, is collaborating and working with other people. It kind of lifts the load of the preparation, and then really does help when you're nervous too.
Yeah, that's a really great point, Jessie, because I think a lot of times we kind of, especially being in a remote space, we're not sure how. All right, that was a fear of mine of like, how am I going to develop relationships with people? This is very different than my MSW. I moved to a whole new town, and met in person. All my classes were live in person, and so it was different to try it in this environment, but I was so reassured. One thing that I can say UK does exceptionally well is holding virtual spaces on a very consistent basis. And so taking advantage of that, especially when you start thinking about publications too. Um, Find a bestie. Find a friend with your same level of expertise and interest, I have friends that are local to me, that live in my neck of the woods in Georgia. Denitra, she graduated from the program with us in DSW. She graduated back in May. We worked together at Fort Valley State, and that's also my bestie. And And Triana, she is also someone that's local to me. And so, just kind of building spaces that could look like a group me, that could look like a group chat, an email thread, something just so, you start to find that tribe of people when you have an idea. I came across a fellowship opportunity or a research opportunity with ACLS, I believe, and it is a multidisciplinary um, project where they're wanting us to have two disciplines of social sciences work together on a project. And my idea was reflecting back on what went well in child welfare during the epidemic in the 80s. And now that fentanyl is a thing and it's getting crazy in Georgia, um, so, I'm wondering, what does child removals look like? What does placement and kinship utilization look like in this era of, changes in our processes, even how we place children or how we make decisions about removing children from homes?
Deja, I need to connect you with one of my students. That's what she's doing her capstone on that topic. She's
See, listen, that's why we come to the meetings, friends.
exactly. She's writing on grandparents serving as kinship parents, right? Kinship placement in rural Appalachia because of the opioid epidemic, and training that community and reaching and being able to support those grandparents, because they're not just kinship placement, they're also the grandparents. And so there's
Yeah,
really interesting stuff. So email me, please, when you can, and remind me,
for
and
sure.
I'll connect you both via email. But you see, this is how you
Oh,
make connections, y'all. You have to be in spaces where you can talk about your work, and
mhm.
and these things will happen organically. Someone will say, oh my God, I know somebody who's doing research on that, or I know somebody who wants to do. So you make those connections organically when you're talking about your work, with the passion that you have. So I want to talk a little bit about poster presentations, if that's valuable, if that's okay. Poster presentations are a very, well, I'm not going to say it's very easy. It's an easier way to get started. Like if you don't have experience with presenting at conferences, or maybe you've only presented at very small conferences and you want to go to larger conferences. If you've presented with someone before, but you want to do something alone next time, it's a really great way to get your feet wet. You don't have to be overwhelmed that you're talking to a room full of people, whatever that means. Sometimes 10 is a lot for people, right? So with a poster, you're just staying put right there. People are coming to you and they're reading your poster and they're asking you questions. So you're not standing in front of a crowd talking. You are standing next to your poster. Your poster is doing the talking for you. Everything you have to say is right there. People will read it and then they'll ask questions. And they go, oh yeah, here you go. So it's clarifying questions, right? And then that's it. Pressure's off. They walk to the next poster and you're like, great. So it's a great way to get started. It's a great way to hone in your skills. The University of Kentucky does offer for students, um, you have a template that you can, several templates for posters that you can download, and it's like plug and play. So it's basically designed on a PowerPoint slide, like one slide, and like everything is like made very, very small. So when you zoom in is where you can actually see it. There are several templates that you can download and plug in. It'll say introduction. You plug in your introduction, findings. There's areas for pictures that you can upload graphs or whatever. And if you are a student, you can also if you're going to a conference that doesn't have e-posters, most of them nowadays is electronic. You email your one slide that they're going to blow up and use. And then when you get there, they load it up on a screen for you. But some conferences still use the old school paper poster, And for students, you can get a poster printed for free on campus at the university. And if you're not on campus, but you have someone who is, they can mail it to you, like ask somebody, ask one of the professors, ask Dr. ER, somebody can go pick it up for you and mail it to you. It's people do it all the time. I've had it done. I've had stuff printed there and ask a colleague to go pick it up and mail it to me. It is possible. You can also print it at Staples for like $30, in like really thick quality paper. Just don't leave it on the airplane like I did one time. I showed up without a poster, but so poster is great. It's a great way to start. And I encourage all of you to look at your capstone, either the totality of your capstone or an individual product, and put that on a poster format and go talk to people about it. And then you're going to get feedback that'll help you, like I said earlier, like fine tune your work based on people's questions. So.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Dr. Llamosa, because those templates are life changers. Remember how I was telling y'all I teach research? My students are required to participate in Research Day on our campus. And so I made some templates for them, and I'm going to share them with you guys because they're free and they're on Canva. So, we are well acquainted with Canva at this point. They are our besties.
Well, I need you as a mentor to help me with the public speaking and the posters.
You're talking to Deja, right?
Yes, Deja. Because I see her on Facebook with her students, with the posters, the presentations, and Miss
Oh.
Yolanda. Well, Mrs. Yolanda, you have your conference in New Orleans.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much. I try real hard with my students. They kick against the prick because I do teach BSW students, and they're like, why do we have to do all this? But I'm like, you're gonna appreciate it when you go to graduate school. When you can develop a research proposal, and that's all they're doing, is just how would you carry out a study? What does the literature say about your topic? That's it, that's all. Like, don't overthink it, y'all.
Yeah, that's great. Another topic that I wanted to talk about that is kind of easier to present on is a lot of times if you do a trial, if you do like a pilot study or a test study, something like that, you can present on that and share the findings. If you do a unique way of doing an internship, if you have a specific assignment that you tried that received a lot of positive feedback, you can talk about that. There was so many things right after like the end of 2020, 2021, where people were talking about like, this is what we did, in transitioning to online. This is what we did with new things at a distance. This is how we got through it. And so if you've done something and it's been really successful with what Dr. Llamosa mentioned earlier, like other people may have never thought about that before. They may not know the logistics of how do you do that. They may not realize how they could implement a specific assignment in their program. And so a lot of it, like you just talk about like how you developed what you did, what did you do, what did you learn from it, what worked well, what didn't work well, how you would change it the next time, share some student feedback. If you have a student that is able to come with you or someone who was a stakeholder through the process that's able to give kind of some sort of testimony about your pilot study. If you are online, you could do a recording and share a clip of that as well too. And those are always really interesting too, because at least for me, like I want to know, like, what does this actually look like in practice? Do you have experience with this? Have you implemented what you've been researching, and how did it go? And so that's something that you could think about as well. That could be really, you are confident on it. If you've invested in it and you've completed something and you've learned, it may be easier to share than thinking about like all of this research maybe that you've done, but you haven't done anything with it yet. Consider what you've done as a pilot study One of my very first presentations with my coworkers was we created, amongst our program, we created a Facebook group for students, and only a certain number of students were invited. We're an online program, and so those who were already active in attending our virtual opportunities, it was a pilot study, right? So we didn't open it up to everybody. We invited those students to join this group, and then each week we discussed hot topics, whether it was current events or a specific policy or whatnot, and then created this space for students to kind of interact in a way that they were not being graded in the classroom, but it was still a professional environment, and being able to talk about the things that were not yet like implemented into the content of our courses. And we just presented that, and it was very well received. And it was something that, we asked the audience and opened it up for, are they doing anything similar to that? How could that work in their program? And then those were pieces like Dr. Llamosa mentioned, holding on to the questions that people asked, the feedback, the comments that we received from our audience were things that we were able to then kind of put into that program, and adjust with maybe limitations or problems that we were having and we weren't sure how to address. We were able to get some feedback that was helpful to us too. And so that's a fun way to present to, and especially for my first time, was not as intimidating as sharing specific research and finding, because it was very, very practical.
That brings me, that brought a thought to my mind here, Jessie. The process, right? You're saying, it doesn't have to be formal research. It doesn't have to, you don't have to present on a formal piece of scholarship or formal piece of literature. You don't have to have your stuff published before you can talk about it. In fact, I would say it helps to do it the other way around, helps to talk about it and then publish, because you get that feedback. But think about what Jessie was saying, like your experiences, right? So the scholarship of teaching and learning, SOTL, which those of you that are in the education track or the education concentration will know what that is, right? It's the art of teaching and learning, and then learning by teaching, and then teachings for learning. So we learn, right, as teachers. And so that line is blurred for a reason, and the scholarship of teaching and learning is just a whole discipline and a whole area of research and scholarship practice that talks about the process of teaching and learning. So if you were, so your concentration, not your concentration, your conversation circles, for example, that we all have, I ended up presenting with my conversation circle, like my 3 other colleagues from the DSW program, on what it was like for us to be part of the conversation circle. That turned into a conference presentation at the Midwest SOTO conference 2 years ago, I think, 3 maybe. But basically, we asked Dr. ER to help us by preparing, she couldn't go to that, but preparing a 2-minute video, a recorded video, talking about what the conversation circles were, what they were for, and how they came about, and why they are part of the curriculum. So that was the introduction to our presentation. And then we did a panel discussion. And we just talked about our experiences, me as a Latina, triracial woman immigrant. The other one is a Persian American woman. And then we had one person who is in 2 white males, but with different, identities and different social work backgrounds. Like one worked in academia, the other one was a leader in like a community mental health thing. So vastly different experiences. And it was so fun to just sit there and talk about our experiences and what we learned in sense of belonging, creating a community among us, among the students in a distance education format where you're not sitting next to people, but what that meant for us to create those partnerships and support each other throughout the program, but also continue to have that contact after graduation and doing stuff together. And it was incredibly well received. And then we wrote a paper about it. So that presentation inspired us because of the interest from the audience, it inspired us to actually write it up. So everything that we talked about, we just wrote it all up in an article. So talk about your experiences too.
I have a question. I really appreciate all of you guys sharing your experiences. And I have not presented in probably like 7 years at a conference, and it was a poster. Um, and one of my goals is to actually do a presentation. So with that, a fear that keeps popping up in my head is, what if I get pushed back or get somebody who is um, oppositional to my research or my information. So have any of you guys experienced that, and what was the reaction? What was the outcome?
There was a rapper that once said, I looked at my wrist and I had time today. Um,
Very good quote. Okay.
I have gotten pushback, and not at a conference, but in my community where people know me and like, don't play, y'all. Come on, man. Y'all know I've been in these deep streets for a minute. Um, but I did have to stand firm. Because the reason why I was getting critiqued, I got critiqued by a county director who felt like kinship wasn't the answer to our issues regarding placement stability. Some social workers kind of feel like the apple don't fall far from the tree, so why are we placing these, we taking them out the frying pan and putting them in the fire? And I had to push back on that and provide literature to support my argument about why there are benefits to utilizing kin care. Um, and so, to Dr. Lamosa's point, that a lot of times this is how you get good at being able to stand on business when people try you, is because you know your stuff. And so now, could I talk about substance use disorders in the same way? Maybe not, because that's not my area of expertise. But I stand on business because I know about kinship care. I know that like the back of my hand, on top of the fact that I have lived experience. It's interesting. That's a part of one of our assignments for this week, is talking about the connection of lived experience with practice as a social worker. I was raised by a kin caregiver, and she made a mountain out of a molehill. She did amazing things with us with no support from the state. And so, just knowing what I know about a particular topic, that's what makes you an expert. And so, you know, becoming more and more well versed in it, it was after I made my position and explained to her the benefits of kinship care. It was time for the benediction. It was time to go ahead and close out that meeting, because I'm just like, if I just know what I'm talking about, just go find you something safe to do. Like,
I
like,
love it.
yeah, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Yes.
I love
Of
it.
course.
I love that. Now I want to know the next time you present, I want to go and disagree with you on purpose just to see that happen in real life. But I've had pushback too, but I've taken a different approach from Deja. You know, people are entitled to different perspectives, right? And I welcome that when I know what I'm talking about, hopefully, when I'm talking about it in front of an audience. If I got to that point, it's because I'm confident in the material that I'm presenting. Somebody has a different perspective on that. I mean, as long as they're not attacking you personally, they're not being ugly, right? But if they're talking to you about that, it's like, it's okay. I welcome that perspective, because maybe they're going to open my eyes to something I hadn't thought of, or they're going to give me a perspective that I had not considered through my own eyes, right? Now, you guys know this. Scholarship and research is never neutral. We see everything that we see through our eyes they are tainted, or formed, I suppose, because of our intersectional identities. So if I'm talking about a topic, you know, with Deja, as a Black woman, you're gonna have a different topic, a different perspective on a topic than me as a Latina immigrant, or next person as a white person or as an indigenous person. So it's good to have, we don't want to live in an echo chamber. We don't want, too many people do that, and most of them are in the White House. We don't want to do that. We want to take in different perspectives and with and it's okay. It's different when people are heckling you, you know, like just interrupting your presentation and stuff like that. Has never happened to me. I've seen it happen to other people, and all they did was ask them politely to please leave because they were disrupting the session, and it's okay to do that. But yeah, disagreement is not a bad thing. We can learn from it.
Thank you.
I agree. And I do think, not to communicate it as a way of arrogance, but communicate it in a way of helping people to understand that, to your point again, Dr. Llamosa, that it's beyond our personal experiences and personal beliefs, that we've got literature, we've got evidence to support our points. What can we do, right?
Mallory, I have a question for you.
Okay.
So you're talking about, this was your first presentation and you were so nervous. In hindsight, what have you learned about this first experience? Because I mean, you went like, for being a first presentation, first conference, you went to CSWE. I mean, you picked the largest conference in social work nationwide to do your first one. Like, whew, that takes courage. So what did you learn from that? And in hindsight, do you feel like you needed to be as nervous as you were?
Well, thank you for the question, Dr. Llamosa. And I guess looking back now, I didn't think about it was the biggest conference there is. I just thought about I have to do it, and this is it, and this is the one I go to every year. So this is the one I'm going to do. I think I learned that every presenter is nervous. And I think I learned that from my co-presenter because she just seems like she has it all together. She's a doctor. She's been a doctor. She, knows everything up and down, left to right. And she was telling me that she was extremely nervous and had never presented in person before. And just to be honest, I could not sleep the night before. I thought I was going to wake up late. My presentation was the first one in the morning, and I was like, I'm going to show up with no eyebrows and nothing, wearing my pajamas. So I couldn't sleep. But after it was done and all of the positive feedback that we received for it, I learned that there's no need to be nervous because if you know the material and you know what you're presenting and you're passionate about what you're presenting, then that will come across versus somebody just going through the motions. So I learned, and everybody, I love CSWE because they're all social workers, and all of us social workers have big hearts and we're compassionate and passionate about what we do. So I think they are there to support you. That's I don't think they would be like, "Oh, that was horrible. You did terrible and you should not ever do that ever again." But they make you feel like you did what you needed to do and you did a great job. And so that's one thing I would say to all of you guys is don't be nervous. I mean, be nervous if you need to be, but do it and it is 100% worth it.
Yeah, I would also say practice as well too. That could help reduce your nerves, so you know how long you're expected to take. You can kind of judge like how many questions you can take. Do you need to go slower? Do you need to cut out content because you have too much in there? Once you've practiced it enough and know that you can kind of squeeze it in your time frame, then that could really help as well too, especially if you are presenting with some technology that you need to be familiar with. I've attended too many presentations presentations where people are like sharing their slides and like they don't even have it in presenter mode, or they're trying to do a poll and then they don't know how to share the results or whatever. If you are presenting with technology, make sure you are competent to know how to utilize that technology, or have somebody there that can jump in and support and help you. You know, technology messes up, or it just may not work the same if you're working on like a different device or whatever, but you want to be familiar with what you're utilizing, and then try and utilize technology to your advantage to make it engaging. Mallory had mentioned both Mentimeter and Word Cloud. There are so many tools out there, aside from even just Zoom polls. Those are definitely better than nothing, but try and engage with as many tools as you can too, because those also give you an opportunity to kind of step back and take a breather, look at your slides really quickly while people are completing whatever interactive module you're asking them to do, whether it's a poll or adding words to something, can help pace you and give you an opportunity to just step back as well too. So that's another element of creativity that you can add in and try, but please make sure you are comfortable and confident with the ones that you are utilizing, so that they work well, because if you try something and it doesn't work, it's probably going to trip you up and make you even more nervous than you were before. Same thing as Zoom, making sure you know how to like share your screen, and while you're sharing your screen, how you can still see your notes at the same time. Those are all things that you want to practice and be familiar with, because you just may not even realize until you start to go, like things don't work as well when you are live than they used to. So
I agree with that, Jessie. Thank you. I think too, for me, I did practice with the technology. We went the day before, we practiced, we plugged it all in, and it was very helpful. Don't forget your laptop charger, anybody who who is going. But one thing I will say from being in attendance at the CSWE is that the the people that attend those, they want to go back with information that they can put into plan, into action, implement. So I think it helps to have those things in your presentation, like key bits they can take with them, or a Google Drive. We did a Google Drive with articles and tips and tricks and strategies that they could access at any time after the conference. And then also like just the audience participation, I think, is a big part, because we all have such a great perspective and we learn so much from other people's perspective. So having that in there as well and seeing what other people do teaches you and also the other participants. Sorry, Dr. Llamosa, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, 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 no. That was great. I'm glad you did. Yeah. I was just gonna say, like, you also don't have to use extra stuff. Like, if you're not comfortable with it, or if you're nervous enough, just the talking part, and then adding a poll or adding this and that is gonna make you more nervous, don't use it. There's nothing wrong with just having a conversation with your audience. There's nothing wrong with that. And if you have a small, small room, let's say with a handful of people, pull up a chair, sit in a circle, and do your presentation. You don't have to be so formal. You don't have to adhere to these, societal expectations and ideals of what a lecture looks like. I have done that before. I've had like 5 or 6 people in a room, pull up a chair, can we sit in a circle and have a conversation. But to your point, Mallory, I think handouts go a long way, especially for big conferences where people are just going from session to session, from session to session. If you have a little bit of like one pager handout with some takeaways and your contact information, people really appreciate that. It saves them taking a picture of your slides, and trying to figure out, like, I don't have a pen. I need to write your email. That just give them a handout. It goes a long way.
We did actually print out handouts, and I didn't know that you can scan a QR code on paper. I'm so not technologically savvy, but we had some of those. But one thing I did want to say before we ended is we had an hour for our session, and I thought, how are we going to make this last an hour? It goes by super fast. It really does. And when you're talking, you're like, oh my gosh, we've already gone through all this. We have all this time. No, you fill the time and it flies by. So do it and enjoy it and build your skills with presenting because I think we're all still learning. I don't know, Dr. Llamosa, do you ever feel like not nervous when you're presenting or?
I don't feel like I do anymore. I have fun doing it. I like it. I don't think I feel nervous, no. I
So we
feel
have,
more nervous with a small audience than I do a large audience, like I mentioned earlier. Like if I have to talk to 4 or 5 people, I'm like, oh great. But if it's 50 people in a room, I'm like, I'm good because I just like they all blur out to me. I can't see any faces. I don't know. Yeah.
also there's an end goal then. If we keep doing it, then we won't be as nervous.
Yes, excellent, everyone. Thank you so much, everyone who has shared and the questions that have been asked. So you just got about 5 minutes left. If anybody has any questions, you want to come on and ask them or throw them in the chat. I will say I posted a Google Doc. I will also say, like, reach out to your local universities or even libraries. See if there are opportunities to just be a guest lecturer for one day. And that's a good way if you have not been in a formal classroom and taught before. Being a guest lecturer is very similar to what you would be doing for a presentation. And so that's another good way to get experience. All of these things are really good for your resume as well, too. So, once you have your in and you're confident at it, I encourage you to just keep going, especially for those of us who are in education and are needing things on there for professional development, for rank promotion and so forth. It's a very important thing to do. And then, yes, reach out to your NASW chapter. Yes, there's a link on there for Social Work Today. They always have the NASW chapter conferences, and that you can reach out, and you don't have to be in that state to present or attend either. So it's a good way to get experience on a little bit of a smaller venue than CSWE as well, too. Are there any questions? I also posted a link. Our meeting in November flyer is there if you want to grab that and save the date for it too.
Yeah, I was just gonna put my work email in the chat because my boss always wants to do stuff during Social Work Month. And so I probably will be putting together a call, if you will, for proposals for presenters to present to our students during Social Work Month. And so, yeah, we're welcoming some creative ideas for sure. So, yeah, I'll drop my email in the chat so we can connect with that later.
And thank you, Dr. Llamosa, for joining us.
My
Yes,
pleasure.
thank you so much.
My pleasure. Anytime. Well, not anytime, but definitely next month.
I was going to
But
say, and again. Yes. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. We appreciate it. Have a great evening, great afternoon.
Thank
bye, everybody.
you.
Bye.